which can be easily reached on your own with a short train ride, or you can go on a 4-hour packaged bus tour. Queluz Palace is often considered the Portuguese version of Versailles. Formal gardens in the French style add another pleasant dimension to the visit. Queluz Palace was built in 1747 and used by the royals until 1910 when Portugal's monarchy came to an end. There is still a section which is sometimes occupied by visiting heads of state, including Queen Elizabeth and President Reagan.
The entrance is on the other side. I'm going to buy the tickets, huh?
It's quite helpful to have a guide who does the work for you, picks up the tickets, and then she'll be taking us through and describing all the sights inside the palace and explaining the historic significance of Queluz Palace. It's really lovely to see that the young school kids, the local kids, also get to learn about their historic heritage on various school field trips. You see this throughout Europe frequently. There's day trips for the kids, preschoolers like these, and they really value education in Europe and Portugal, and they have a very strong system of early childhood education, and then right up through college. It's heavily subsidized by the government, so they are well educated.
Okay, so we are now in Queluz Palace. We are going to visit the palace of the 18th century, very Baroque and very Rococo, as I told you. Look at this room, which was the ballroom and could be used also as the throne room. It has all the characteristics of this style. Very light colors, mirrors all over, allegoric paintings on the ceiling and on the wall, flowers on the wall, and everything decorated with gold leaf. Everything you see in this palace looking like gold is gold leaf. On the floor we see in most part of it bricks, this kind of brick, which we still use in our country houses. This is very, very Portuguese, very Mediterranean if you want, and it's still in use, this same kind of material. The two chandeliers, they are in crystal, Portuguese crystal, 18th century. And this room was used to sign the documents at the time of King Joseph I.
You can stroll through the palace on your own and simply admire the original furnishings and artworks on display, or you can come along with a guide who can explain a lot of the significance of the items to you. The palace was built in the 18th century as a summer residence for the royal family.
The history of the palace goes on by the portraits of our royal family. And in here we have the founders of the palace. Peter and his wife and niece, Maria. So we see many portraits in the palace representing the nobility, the kings and queens of Portugal, basically from the 18th century. This is King Miguel. The portrait here is representing Queen Mary, the first queen who lived here in this palace. Notice the piano, it's a French Empire piano, as well as the carpet on the floor. This is probably the oldest carpet we have in the palace from the 17th century. This is the dining room for official receptions. I must tell you that the idea of having a dining room, a place for that, it's not a Portuguese idea. It's an English idea which was introduced in Portugal later on, actually at the time of Napoleon, because Duke Wellington came to Portugal to help us fighting against the French. So it was only at the time of Duke Wellington and the British generals coming with them that we accepted that idea of having one room for dining, so a dining room. In the 18th century it was not like that. It is a very, very primitive piano. It cannot even be called a piano, it's a clementis. And in here you can see two different kinds of tiles, because they belong to two different periods. The ones over there, they are only blue and white, as you can see. They are dating back to the first half of the 18th century. It was an influence from the porcelain coming from China, from the Ming dynasty. A few years after, we are using already different colors. They have a meaning. We didn't manage to discover all of them. But for instance, that lady over there is representing Africa. The screen is Chinese. We had a great contact with China and Japan. In this room we find two chests of drawers. They are also Portuguese, Queen Mary, although they remind us a lot of the French style Louis XVI.
Similar to the other main summer palace in Sintra, but designed in the more elaborate Baroque and Rococo styles.
It's crystal from Venice. It's the Queen's dressing room, probably one of the most delicate and feminine rooms in the palace. Decorated with mirrors, children all around, gilt wood, flowers on the ceiling, and notice that the parquet on the floor is representing the same geometrical designs on the ceiling. This was the dressing room of Queen Carlotta. Life in those days was not very comfortable in spite of all the luxury. Sometimes you would like to have also some private life, because the king's bedroom was everything but private. The bed is Portuguese, done here in Portugal. The carpet is also French. The paintings on the ceiling, they have been restored. In this room we have two chests of drawers, as you can see. They belong to the original furniture of this palace ordered by King Peter. They were put it here in this room and never moved. And that's unusual because as you can imagine, the palaces was lived in different ways depending on the couple was living here, but those chests of drawers, they never moved. If you look at the walls, you certainly notice that the silk is new. Actually, this palace, it's still under restoration. It was quite difficult to find this same kind of silks. Some of them was made in France, another in Macau in China.
Queluz is not a huge palace. It's nothing like Versailles with 2,000 rooms. So it's possible to walk through in about a half an hour and see a nice variety of styles of rooms. There's the dining rooms, there's a music room, the king's bedroom, the queen's bedroom, the beautiful coffered ceilings. Every place you look, there are beautiful things to see in the Baroque and the Rococo style. So we really enjoyed ourselves inside Queluz, just as the royalty must have when they were living here over 100 years ago. Of course, the royalty is gone now, and Portugal is a modern democratic republic. Last look at the gardens as we move along on our way.